There's this idea that floats around sometimes. It's a pretty unsettling thought. Young men, usually college-aged, strong, athletic, they go out for a night with friends. They have some drinks, then they vanish. Days or weeks later, their bodies show up in a river or a lake. Always a drowning. It's sad, a real tragedy for any family. But then some people started looking at these cases and saw something more. They saw a pattern, a dark secret. They called it the Smiley Face Killer network. The idea is simple, but terrifying. It says these aren't just accidents. It says someone, or a group of people, is targeting these young men. They drug them, abduct them, then drown them. And as a kind of signature, a taunt, they spray paint a smiley face near where the bodies are found or where the victims disappeared. This isn't a new theory. It's been talked about for years now, mostly by a few retired detectives and an academic or two. They say it's a nationwide conspiracy, a network of killers operating in the shadows. But here's the big question, the one that really matters. Is any of this real? Does a Smiley Face Killer network actually exist? Let's go back to how this whole theory started. It wasn't some internet rumor at first, not exactly. It was pushed by a few former law enforcement officers. Guys like Kevin Gannon and Anthony Duarte, they were joined by a forensic expert, Dr. Lee Gilbertson. They looked at a bunch of these drowning cases, particularly in the Midwest. They saw too many similarities for it to be random. To them, the way these men died, the type of men they were, it just screamed foul play. They started pointing out things, how the victims were often good students, athletes, popular guys, how they were often last seen leaving a bar, how their bodies were found in water, often quite a distance from where they were last seen, implying they couldn't have just stumbled in. And then there was the graffiti. The smiley faces, sometimes found on a bridge pillar near a recovery site, sometimes on a wall close to where a person vanished. For Gannon and his team, these weren't just random acts of vandalism. They were calling cards, they were proof. So, what exactly do the proponents of this theory claim? It's pretty specific. They say these killers are organized, they are sophisticated. This isn't just some random killer, it's not one person, it's a network. They say this network watches bars, picks targets, probably drugs them, then abducts them. They might hold them for a bit, then take them to a body of water and force them in. Sometimes, they even suggest the killers place the bodies in the water in a way that makes it look like an accident. They want police to think it's just another tragic drowning. The victims fit a certain mold for them. They are almost always white males, generally between 18 and 25. They're usually in good physical condition, with no known enemies, no reason to commit suicide. And alcohol is almost always a factor in their disappearance. The locations are key too. Most of the early cases they focused on were in states like Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. Places with lots of rivers and lakes, but then the theory started to expand, stretching across the country, claiming hundreds of potential victims. The smiley face itself is a huge part of the argument. It's the supposed signature. It's the physical evidence, they say, that ties these disparate cases together. Without the smiley face, it's just a string of drownings. But with it, they see a pattern. They see intent. They see a message. Some even suggest other symbols, like cryptic messages or numbers, are part of the network signature. Let's look at some of the cases that are often cited as proof. There's Patrick McNeil. He disappeared from La Crosse, Wisconsin in 2007. His body was found in the Mississippi River months later. A smiley face was found spray painted on a wall not far from where he was last seen. For the theory's supporters, this was a classic example. Young, athletic, disappeared after a night out, found in water with a signature. Then there's Chris Jenkins. He vanished in Minneapolis, Minnesota in 2002. His body was found in the Mississippi River a few months later. Originally ruled an accidental drowning, his family never believed it. They pushed for more investigation. Eventually, police changed his death to foul play suspected. This case is often held up as one where authorities initially got it wrong, but later came around. Again, a smiley face was reportedly found nearby. Todd Gieb from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He disappeared in 2005. His body was found in a pond weeks later. The official cause was drowning, but his family had questions. They believed he might have been a victim of foul play. The theory points to his case as another one where police were too quick to rule it an accident. William Lamb disappeared in Omaha, Nebraska in 2202. His body was found in the Missouri River months later. His case also gets brought up a lot by those who believe in the network. Again, the pattern seemed to fit young, last seen after a night out, found in water. There are many more names, hundreds sometimes, that get connected to this theory. The proponents meticulously map out these cases, drawing lines between them, highlighting the shared elements. For them, it's not just coincidence. It's a deliberate, chilling pattern that law enforcement is missing or choosing to ignore. But here's where we hit the wall of skepticism. The vast majority of law enforcement agencies, including the FBI, do not believe the Smiley Face Killer network exists. They have repeatedly stated that there is no credible evidence to support such a theory. This isn't them being dismissive without looking. This is them, after extensive investigation into many of these individual cases, concluding that the theory simply doesn't hold up to scrutiny. Why do they reject it? For several very practical reasons. First, there's lack of forensic evidence. If these men are being drugged, abducted, held, and then drowned, you'd expect to find signs. You'd expect consistent evidence of struggle, defensive wounds, ligatures, or specific drugs in their system that point to incapacitation. While alcohol is almost always present, that's not surprising for someone leaving a bar. And while some victims might have had other drugs in their system, it's not a consistent pattern of a specific killer drug being used. Crucially, autopsies in most of these cases do not show signs of foul play. They show drowning. They show alcohol. They show hypothermia. Then there's the issue of the modus operandi, or MO. The theory claims a sophisticated network, but a sophisticated network would likely have a more consistent MO. While drowning young men is a common theme, the specifics of how they vanish, how far they travel, how they end up in the water, these details vary from case to case. There's no consistent method of attack or disposal that police can definitively link. Each case, when investigated thoroughly, tends to have unique circumstances. And what about the smiley face graffiti? This is a big one. Skeptics point out that graffiti is incredibly common. Seriously, you can find smiley faces, all sorts of symbols, and random tags on bridges, walls, and underpasses in pretty much any urban area in the country. To take one specific symbol and declare it a signature for a murderous network requires a huge leap of faith. Is it a coincidence that a smiley face was found near some of these sites? Maybe. Is it proof of a coordinated murder spree? Law enforcement says no. They investigate the graffiti when it's reported, but they haven't found any direct link to the deaths. No DNA, no specific style, nothing that says this was done by the killer. Each of these cases, tragic as they are, is typically investigated as an individual incident. Local police departments, with the help of state and sometimes federal agencies, dig into what happened. They interview witnesses, check surveillance footage, process crime scenes if any are identified. And in the vast majority of these cases, they conclude that the most likely explanation is accidental drowning, often exacerbated by alcohol consumption and cold weather conditions. Academics and scientists also tend to be very skeptical of the smiley face killer theory. They talk about things like Occam's razor. That's the idea that when you have competing explanations for a phenomenon, the simplest one is usually the correct one. And in these drowning cases, the simplest explanation is often a tragic accident. Young men, especially those who've been drinking, can make bad decisions. They can stumble, fall into water, and quickly become disoriented and succumb to hypothermia. They also talk about confirmation bias. This is where people tend to interpret new evidence as confirmation of their existing beliefs. If you already believe there's a smiley face killer network, you'll actively look for patterns that support it, and you'll downplay or ignore evidence that contradicts it. You see a smiley face, and suddenly it's a clue, not just random spray paint. You see a young man drowned, and suddenly it fits the profile, even if the details are different. The statistical reality of drownings is also important to consider. Thousands of people drown in the United States every year. A significant portion of these are young men. Many occur in natural bodies of water. Alcohol is a known major contributing factor in adult drownings. When you have so many potential victims, it's not surprising that some might share superficial similarities. That doesn't automatically mean a conspiracy. Rivers, especially cold ones, are incredibly dangerous, particularly at night. Alcohol impairs judgment, balance, and the body's ability to regulate temperature. Hypothermia sets in quickly, leading to disorientation, confusion, and even what's called paradoxical undressing, where people remove their clothes because they feel hot, even though they are freezing. This can make a drowning look more mysterious than it is. And then there's the sheer logistical difficulty of orchestrating such a widespread, undetected network of killers. To abduct, hold, and drown hundreds of people across multiple states over decades, without leaving any consistent forensic evidence, without any reliable witnesses, without anyone ever being caught, without any leaks from within the network, it's a monumental undertaking. It would require incredible coordination, secrecy, and resources. And for what purpose? The theory doesn't really offer a clear motive. Is it ritualistic? Is it just for kicks? No one knows. So if there's so much skepticism from official sources, why does this theory persist? And why does it resonate with so many people, especially the families of the victims? The answer often comes down to grief and the desperate need for answers. When a young person dies in a mysterious way, especially when their body is found weeks or months later in a river, accidental drowning can feel like an incomplete or unsatisfying explanation. It leaves too many questions. How did they get there? Why didn't they call for help? What really happened in those missing hours? For grieving families, the idea that a loved one might have been murdered, even by a shadowy network, can sometimes be easier to process than the idea that their child just stumbled into a river and died alone. It offers a focus for their anger and sorrow. It suggests someone is responsible, and maybe that someone can be caught. It gives them something to fight against, a target for their pain, rather than just the randomness of fate. There's also a level of distrust of authority that plays into it. Some people feel that police aren't looking hard enough, or that they're too quick to close cases, especially when alcohol is involved. They might believe that law enforcement is covering something up, or that they simply aren't equipped to handle a large-scale, organized crime network like the one proposed. This distrust fuels the idea that the official story isn't the true story. And frankly, the true crime genre has a powerful appeal. People are fascinated by mysteries, especially dark ones. The idea of a hidden killer, a secret society, a widespread conspiracy, it makes for a compelling, albeit disturbing, narrative. Social media platforms amplify these stories, allowing theories to spread rapidly, often without the necessary critical scrutiny. A catchy name like Smiley Face Killer sticks in the mind. The impact of this theory is complex. For the grieving families, as mentioned, it can offer a sense of explanation, however false. It might give them hope that justice can be found, but it can also prolong their suffering, diverting their focus from closure and healing towards a quest for a killer who may not exist. It can lead them to believe that their loved one was a victim of something more sinister when the evidence simply isn't there. For law enforcement, the theory is a frustration. They have to spend time and resources debunking it, answering questions from the public and the media, and reassuring families while simultaneously conducting thorough investigations into each individual death. It can distract from the real, tangible evidence in front of them and lead to misdirection. For the public, the theory can create unnecessary fear and alarm. It paints a picture of unseen predators lurking in the dark, making people question their safety and that of their loved ones. It can also lead to a misunderstanding of how these tragic drownings actually occur, obscuring the very real dangers of alcohol, cold water, and poor judgment. So, let's come back to the main question. Did the Smiley Face Killer network really exist? Based on the evidence available, based on the findings of law enforcement agencies and forensic experts across the country, the answer is no. There is no credible, widespread evidence that supports the existence of an organized network of killers targeting young men and leaving smiley faces as their signature. What we have is a tragic series of individual drownings. Many of these deaths share common factors: young men, alcohol consumption, proximity to water, and sometimes a mysterious element due to the circumstances of their disappearance. It's a pattern, yes, but it's a pattern of similar accidents, not a pattern of organized crime. The similarities in the victims, young, white, male, athletic, often out drinking, can be explained by demographic vulnerability. Young men, especially college age, often engage in higher risk behaviors. They are statistically more likely to be out late, to consume alcohol, and to be involved in accidents near water. The fact that their bodies are found in rivers or lakes is consistent with accidental drownings in areas where people are commonly around bodies of water after drinking. The smiley face graffiti, while an unsettling coincidence in some cases, has not been forensically linked to the deaths in any way that suggests a killer's signature. It's important to distinguish between an unexplained death and a murder. Not every death that lacks a clear, immediate explanation is the result of foul play. Sometimes, the truth is simply tragic and mundane, an accident. A slip, the unforgiving power of cold water, and the impairing effects of alcohol. The theory highlights a very real human need for answers, for justice, and for meaning in the face of senseless loss. When a life is cut short so suddenly, it's natural to search for something, anything, to explain it. But our desire for an explanation, even a dark and compelling one, should not override the need for actual evidence. The unfortunate reality is that rivers and other bodies of water are dangerous, especially for intoxicated individuals. Accidents happen. And sometimes those accidents are deeply mysterious, leaving behind questions that no theory, however elaborate, can definitively answer without concrete proof. This isn't to diminish the grief of the families or to suggest that every investigation was perfect. It's simply to say that, as things stand, the idea of a smiley face killer network remains a controversial theory, unsupported by the facts. It's a compelling story, but it doesn't appear to be a real one.